Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Charney. This is another historic church. I think it's in Leicestershire. It's on the border between Leicestershire and Lincolnshire. This is the church of St Botolph and St John the Baptist, Croxton, Kerrial. It's set on a hilltop site. It's not very far from Nipton or Harston. In fact, Nipton Harston used to be part of one manor belonging to the king with Croxton, Kerrial. There certainly was a priest here in the 12th century. That suggests, therefore, a church, but nothing of that building to speak of survives. There was an abbey here, an abbey of the White Canons, established in 1162, and the village name Croxton Kerrial comes from the Kerrial or Kerrial family who owned the manor. The church was originally dedicated to St Botolph, but was later had John the Baptist added. We don't know why, we don't really know when, but some point in the 16th century. So the church is noted for its medieval pews, and the building we see today is largely of the 15th century. It's largely a perpendicular structure. It has an axial tower. It is vaguely cruciform, but the transepts have been swallowed up at the ends of the aisles, so it's not obviously cruciform like, for example, the church not very far away down along Clawson. So let's have a look around and particularly take note of the pews. The medieval pews are one of the great treasures of this building. As usual, then we start at the west end, and there's this big organ. Of course, those pipes are not real, they are painted. The actual pipes are on the inside. The font is quite a plain octagonal one, no ornamentation. It might have been painted at one point. The cover is 19th century. Looking east here, we see the medieval pews. Pews really become part of church buildings. Well, you start off with open-backed benches in the 14th century. These are 15th century, and here we have the classic, what today is known as a pew, what at the time would actually have been referred to as a bench. And then, of course, you have the Victorians doing silly things, particularly people like John Mason Neale and the Ecclesiological Society, who decide to just be silly with that. And they think that pews are box pews. They loathe box pews, and so they insist that pew has to be spelled P-U-E, on the grounds that some of the early writings say, yes, but that's before English spelling became standardized. Anyway, that's enough moaning about John Mason Neale, who otherwise wrote some good hymns. But in terms of some of his ideas about church history, but there we are. Here we have a poppy head. The word actually comes from French poupée, meaning doll. And at this point, at least, we actually have a human head, this rather grotesque one, looking backwards. We have here some sort of probably bird, probably an eagle. And here we definitely have a bird, although it's looking the other way. Let's see if I can get around to the front here. There we go. There we are. You can see there's the bird's head. There's another eagle. Eagles predominate. This is some sort of dragon. You can tell by the wings. And these things gave a good way for medieval artists to just express themselves. So they're all different. I'm not going to go around all of them, among other things, because there's a lot, but also, most importantly, because I'd rather like people to take these videos as an encouragement to go and visit these places. Here we have the War Memorial, and we've got here the War Memorial 1914-18, quite a lot of people. 1939-45, we've just got the one, RAF, and the other memorial is to a gentleman whose name I won't try to pronounce, obviously Polish descent, killed in Afghanistan. He is 34th Squadron RAF Regiment. And you can see that up here. Rather than a transept, we just have at the end of the aisle. But the effect is the same in terms of having this crossing tower with 4 arches. Here we have Victorian pulpit, and that would have led into the rood loft. There's just some traces you may be able to make out here of red paint on that arch. Under the tower we have this corona, that's what they're called, with candles to light it up, and we go up here into the chancel. Victorian removal of wall plaster, unfortunately. It's unfortunate, of course, because who knows what paintings were under the whitewash. And here we have the reredos, which is, of course, Victorian, and we've got Moses and John the Baptist, and we've got John the Apostle and St. Botolph. And so we turn around. You can see how having a crossing tower makes for these interesting line of sight, but also it isolates the chancel from the nave even more, because unless you're going to do what they do at Eastwell with that enormous great tympanum and stone screen, even a rood screen isn't isolated that much. But here we're right up, there's a tower in between. That's why you've got the modern altar in the tower. And we just come around here. You can see you've got the piano there. So in there, that's just sort of a vestry type area. And down the nave, and then through here into the Lady Chapel here. So here's the Lady Chapel. And in here we've got a little historical display to do with the Croxton Kerrial Heritage Trust. There was a manor house next to the church. The site's been excavated, and some of these finds come from that site. Some medieval, some older, including back, in fact, to the Iron Age and before. And there we have the piscina here in the Lady Chapel. Very little in the way of stained glass, in fact. In fact, there's any stained glass here. Because, well, what was here in the Middle Ages has been destroyed and hasn't been replaced. But of course, the relative lack of money means that you do get these medieval pews surviving with their beautiful poppy heads. I mean, some of these have been restored, and these ones here are Victorian, but the ones in the main part of the church are medieval and very fine. So let's go outside and see what we can see out there. So here we are outside at Croxton Kerrial. You can probably hear the lawnmower behind me. It's the other side of the church, but they're still mowing. Seems to be the day for mowing at the moment. Central tower, we have lower chancel here, and we have the nave here with its clerestory and aisles, and in fact the aisle chapels are basically the transepts, but you can see there's no evidence of separate transepts. It just is those aisle chapels. So good example of the period, good example of this sort of axial tower design, fairly modest version of a cruciform church. It's certainly not asserting itself the way that some of them do. So we'll have a look around the outside, and again being aware that there is lawn mowing going on. So we can see here that now we are very much limestone, a few little bits of ironstone. I suspect that the core of the walls is ironstone, but of course, as we've said, that's a very soft material, so you want to keep that where it's protected, and you want to have the more hard-wearing stone on the outside if you can. Porch is right at the west end of the south aisle. The roof again, lead has been stolen and replaced with something with no scrap value, because some people are selfish so-and-sos who think, oh well, the insurance will pay for it. Well, won't pay for the whole thing, and if it does, it will say, and you have to spend all this money and your premium will be right up. You can see over the door there's John the Baptist, but clerestory in the nave, and of course the aisles under the tower, and the chancel, no clerestory there. We've got these lovely slate gravestones. Here's John Hoyt of Croxton Park, and he died suddenly on October the 17th, 1840, aged 77 years. Which of course can always happen. Doesn't matter your age. Be aware that you may die any day. The West End here is a little bit scrappier. It's a bit more of a mixture of stone. You can see how it's originally had a lower roof line, and this has then been raised to the present roof line when the clerestory is put on, and the clerestory has no west window, so the west window shows us the previous church, and this is 14th century type style there. And we can go, I think we can go round here. Yes, we can. Round to the north side, which is less interesting as north sides normally are, because the north side, that's the faces away from the village, among other things, faces away from the side of the manor house. And of course the manor house, people wanted to look quite, but it still looks quite posh. You've got your modern toilet block you can see in the middle there, and the vestry is Victorian, and there is the tower in the middle. So I'll go back this way so as to avoid the lawn mowing, because you see, well, A, it's noisy, and B, it's dangerous if you get in the way of it. And so there's the gate, and he's right on the edge of Leicestershire, I believe, so he's where the Leicestershire decides to give way to Lincolnshire. And there's some very good churches here. This is just one of them. As I said in the previous video, the one on Nipton, something to do with the big estates here, lots to do with the big estates here, but also in the Middle Ages spent a lot of money, and of course here there was a monastery, an abbey. And so there you have it, St Botolph and St John the Baptist, Croxton, Kerrial. Well, thank you for watching, and may God bless you and keep you until next time.